Iamaleava right or wrong? Well, as a former wide receiver, and Dante Thornton has certainly been outspoken in his support of his quarterback, Nico Iamaleava, saying, "We're all on the outside looking in. We don't really know the why." Okay, I don't really think it's the why that matters. I think it's all in the how that matters. How did he notify Josh Heupel? How did he notify his coaches? How did he tell his teammates? How did he leave it at practice? How did he make the decision to leave? How did he physically leave Rocky Top? That's what matters. I'm Paige Dower. This is a Field Pass on Full Disclosure. The way that Nico and his camp went about the how, it appears from the outside looking in that it went very poorly. How those decisions were not made in the best interest of the optics of how the entire situation looks. I don't think anyone could or should blame Nico and his camp for fighting for every penny they believe the quarterback is worth. I fought for every penny I thought I deserved when I was in TV. Every time my contract was up, I fought for every penny. You absolutely should. If it was, we don't have enough weapons, there's not enough protection for Nico, we need more money. Okay, if I'm doing 10 people's jobs, I want more money. I don't think anyone should fault him for wanting to do that, but it's how they went about it. How many times have they gone about it? When you're in the middle of a contract, you're kind of binded, and a lot of these contracts aren't binding. So that's where the waters get a little murky on where these contracts and NIL disagreements and disputes come up. And I think at the end of the day, if it did come down to the fact that, hey, you didn't have enough money for me, you couldn't meet my price, I'm going to transfer, I don't think there's a ton of outrage. There wasn't a ton of outrage when Carson Beck transferred, leaving Georgia for Miami. A lot of that probably had to do with money. Also, he didn't seem like a great fit for the Bulldogs a season ago. I don't think those things were the issue. The issue is how it went about. So the chain of events that happened. The team, they were all together reporting for practice on Wednesday. They were off Thursday, as they usually are, leading up to the annual spring game. Then you had your annual dinner on Thursday with the team or with the position group. And allegedly, it's been reported that apparently that's when Nico notified his offensive coordinator and Joey Halzle that he's leaving, he's out, he's transferring. Allegedly, that's being reported that is what transpired at the dinner, where I'm told the tacos were very good too, allegedly. So he tells his offensive coordinator, but no one else. Where is that a sign of even just being a good friend? You know, say you're at a family friends cookout and you're actually moving because your husband, your wife, whatever, got a better job and it's last minute and we've got to move quickly. Are you only going to tell the host? You're not going to tell your other friends that are there? You're not going to maybe even tell your acquaintances that, hey, I'm going to have to abruptly leave? I don't think that's a sign of a good friend. I guess being a leader and being a good leader, that's a different argument if that's the avenue that wants to go down, but only notifying your OC allegedly, that's not a proper way to go about it. And I think part of that maybe shows that he felt lost, that he didn't know what the right thing was to do. I think there was a lot of obviously tension in between maybe even Nico and in his camp, how it's being reported, what's being reported, when everything is being reported, how he should tell his team. In this landscape, it's very dicey. It's hard to know when you're the first of something to know always exactly what the right move is, right? Like he's the first quarterback or player to get this massive NIL deal, and he's the first player to be, quote, holding out on his team and being in these crazy contract negotiations. Murky water, no doubt, but there are ways to maintain optics, maintain relationships, don't burn bridges. There are probably plenty of bosses that you guys maybe didn't enjoy working for, but you don't burn those bridges. This burns bridges. That's all it does. So you tell your OC, no one else has a clue what's going on. As we'll hear from the team later, practice or that team meal seemed fine. Then you get to Friday when the team is supposed to report back to practice ahead of Saturday's orange and white game, and he's a no-show. There's no communication between Nico Iamaleava and his head coach, according to Josh Heupel, that he is not showing up for practice. Because when Josh said that he knew that things were kind of over and Nico was moving on, was, quote, when he didn't show up, not, hey, when he told me. Again, that's not a positive indicator that that is someone who is acting as a good leader, acting in good intentions for the university or even for himself, for that to be what Heupel had heard. So you go through practice, he's not there, you try to get some type of communication, it's not happening. So Nico has all but ghosted his head coach, and it got me thinking, like, okay, if you're dating somebody, should you just start sending pictures of Nico if you've ghosted them? And so both parties know what's going on, but that might be a little harsh. But beyond that, can you imagine the amount of people this week that have bought Nico Iamaleava jerseys leading up to not only the spring game, but to the 2025 football season, that now hopefully who have left the tags on can return those? Beyond that, can you imagine how much hype videos, highlight reels, trailers, social media posts that the content creation team at Tennessee had ready to roll out before, during, and after the spring game with Nico's face all over it, and they had to scrub it? I can imagine how much work that took, that maybe they had like a 24-hour notice to delete the scheduled tweets or posts, to scrub his face from the highlight videos that's probably synced up with music, which you probably could spend 24 hours on just one video alone, and they have to scrap everything. That is such a cluster. But then kind of when we look to how the team has responded, I think there's been a lot of accountability from the players. I think there's been a lot of support around them, even from what I can gather just on the comment section on this YouTube page or over on my Twitter page. There's a ton of support, and I think that speaks to the leadership that still is the makeup of this team. Because even when we look to maybe going back to those chain of events and we hear from quarterback Jake Merklinger about kind of what his vibes were of the team leading into the weekend, it sounds like he was just having a good time eating some tacos that Joey's wife made.
Yeah, so the dinner, that dinner I've been planning for a while. We do that every year, Thursday before the spring game. Went in, dinner was normal. Everybody enjoyed it. Had great food. Thank you to Miss Kara Halsey, took care of us with some really good tacos.
Yeah, so I guess what we can gather from that is, according to Jake and what he said or didn't say, it didn't appear that he had any indication that Nico wasn't going to be back the next day, that there was questions around the QB1 spot, that while he practices like the starter, he was actually going to have to be the starter on Saturday, or he's going to be viewed like that on Friday. And again, going back to what we said a few moments ago about the quality of leadership and decision-making being a little murky, Heupel makes it seem like he wasn't explicitly told, that Nico himself told him that I'm going to enter the transfer portal.
Friday morning, when he's a no-show, you come off the practice field and there's no communication.
The other way in which this is a little bit of a cluster is when you think of all of the recruits that were in town this weekend. This is not only a big recruiting weekend for Tennessee football, but it is for other sports as well. Rick Barnes and Kim Caldwell were in attendance at Neyland Stadium for the Orange and White game. They have their team and their recruits in there, or their new guys that they have from the transfer portal. But then you also have to think about Josh Heupel and his recruits that are on campus this entire week. How much has he had to address this issue to them, or what has he had to reaffirm? How much has it taken away and detracted from how he wanted this weekend to go for all of those recruits, and making sure that you can tell that it's a stable ground and stable footing here at Tennessee, and there's not going to be a mass exodus of players leaving because Nico's leaving, and you hope that's not the case. And what has that looked like for him? Because one, the Orange and White game is a huge weekend for other recruits and for the vibe of Vols Fans and of Rocky Top and of Tennessee and being that everything school. And I think we can probably remember to a couple of years ago when Dalton Connect was here. And part of the selling points for DK to come to Tennessee was because of how intense Vols fans were at the Orange and White game. And I think it was before construction. So it might have been full capacity, especially in the lower bowl during that Orange and White game, if I'm not mistaken. But even if it is just half the capacity, Vols fans even this season were intense. And he's just like, wow, that would be a really cool fan base to play in front of. I also want to come to Tennessee now more because of that. And how much has this news maybe detracted from that type of excitement? I think Vols fans were fantastic during the Orange and White game when I was there on the field. They were very loud when it was, time to cheer on the players making touchdown-worthy plays, or when the quarterback stepped out onto the field. And it was I think, encouraging for Josh Heupel to see that side, because he does believe that he'll be able to rely on the support of all fans this season, regardless of how it goes.
Wouldn't be surprised if Vol Nation, rallies around this group of players and this program. I have been here long enough and seen enough things happen that that's why I consider it the greatest fan base in college sports.
It's important to make the right decisions, like when to go for it on 4th down, or when to kick the field goal or go for the touchdown. It's also important to make the right insurance decisions too. That's why my office, Trey McAdams State Farm, is here to help you select the right protection at the right price. Our office will make sure you understand your State Farm coverages, so you'll know what to expect when the unexpected happens. With Trey McAdams State Farm, it's easy to make the right call. When you want the real deal, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Proud sponsor of the Tennessee Vols.
And I do think the saddest thing about the exit and breakup from Nico and Tennessee is how he'll be remembered now, because it wasn't a mutually respectful parting. I don't think many Vol fans are going to look back at his time at Tennessee with a rose-covered lens and say, I'm going to really remember these things about Nico. I'm going to remember that he's the first 5-star quarterback to come to Tennessee since 2002. I'm not going to remember that he helped lead Tennessee to another win over Alabama, gave us a 10-win season, won the Citrus Bowl over Iowa, got us to the 12-team playoff against Ohio State, the first playoff team at Tennessee. I don't think, or even helped bring in highly touted recruits in after him, and maybe even paved the way to getting highly touted quarterback recruits, or even to be in contention for highly touted quarterback recruits like Faison Brandon. I don't think he's going to be remembered for all those positive things that he did at Tennessee because of how ugly this parting got. So you just have to hope that in his next move, he's maybe able to restart, and maybe this is kind of a learning lesson for everybody, and how these things can go, and the agents that you need, the support that you need, and so forth and so on. But yeah, certainly interesting, but there was a lot of positive things happening with spring day, how the guys looked, so I'll have much more coming up on that later this week as well. Talk to you guys then.